What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Shop Talk Tuesday. This is Eric from the future. This is after I actually made this knife, but I wanted to show y'all something real quick. That is how much paper I cut during the sharpness test. Now, you'll see that in the outro, but guys, my voice sounds ridiculous because I'm in the process of coming off of a cold. So I sound like this. This is not my typical speaking voice, but we got a cool build in this video today. Hopefully y'all enjoy it. You know, this is the first Shop Talk Tuesday that we've had in a little while, so I think it's going to be pretty cool. And if you want to see how I actually forged this knife, I did a live stream. It was my last live stream, so if you just go into my video section and go to click on lives, it was the last live stream that I did. I actually forged this one live, so you get to see the entire forge process and commentary and the whole entire thing. I think it's like an hour and 45 minutes long. You can speed through it if you want to, but it shows the entire forging process and full explanations the entire time. Where we're starting at is after we forge the blade. So everything from that forging process on, heat treat, bevel grinding, handle profiling, all that stuff is all in this video. Guys, we're back with the Shop Talk Tuesdays. Hopefully y'all are pumped about that. Let's go ahead. Let's jump into this video. Let's get this thing knocked out. I really wish that I would have filmed the quench of this, but when I thought I was hitting record, I was actually hitting the stop record because for some reason it was already recording. But, you know, I'll pop a picture up on the screen. This is what it looks like whenever you're quenching. Flames, all that stuff. Now, one of the things that I already did, once I got it out of the quench, I let it sit for 5 minutes and then took my Nicholson file, filed the edge, took the decarb layer off, okay, so that I could now take my 65 HRC file right here and file test the actual hardened steel and not the decarb layer. It's hard. It's very hard. So it's absolutely skating a 65 HRC file. So what I need to do is go ahead, temper this back. We're going to go ahead and do 400 degrees for 2 hours. And we're going to just do that times 2. A lot of the times, if it's if this is phasing it, I might only do like a 300 degree temper or a 275 degree. And a lot of that comes into play, the different temperatures, if you're trying to achieve a certain hardness. So if we wanted this to be 64 or even a 65, maybe we'll only temper it for 250 degrees or 275 degrees times 2. And that will actually just bring the hardness down a little bit. You know, when you're tempering, what you're trying to do is bring the hardness of the steel down to a desired hardness. So if it was 68 HRC, and you wanted to bring it down to a 62, maybe you'll do 500 degrees for 2 hours. Or if it's 68 and you're trying to get 65, maybe you only do 275 degrees for 2 hours. There's a recipe to get the desired hardness after the temper for every steel. You can go on to several different websites and actually see what the tempering recipes are to get to certain hardnesses. Now, for me, I want to be skating a 60 HRC file and a 65 to be grabbing it and biting into it. That way it's in that 62 to 63 HRC, which is pretty good for a little, kitchen knife. It's not going to be baton through any wood or anything like that, so it can have a nice, be a little bit more hard than normal. So that's what we're going to go with on this. Go ahead, temper it, 400 degrees, 2 hours times 2, and we'll be good. So I went ahead and file tested it, and we are right at that like 61 to 62 HRC on this. So now what I got to do is go ahead and start grinding in our bevels. Of course, this is going to be post heat treat bevels, so we want to make sure that we keep it cool the entire time we're doing this so that we don't overheat it. You can really easily overheat the blade and mess with your temper if you get it too hot while you're grinding. What we're going to do, I've already went through an angle like this and made sure I had a nice straight edge. Now all I got to do is come in and start grinding these bevels in. And we're going to bring them up almost all the way. So this plunge line is going to come all the way up here. And then we're going to get a nice taper all the way down this blade just through this grinding process. We're using a 36 grit belt to go ahead and get this done. So now that we have the 36 grit done, we've got a nice straight fine edge. We're going to bring that edge down a little bit more, and we're going to hit it with a 120. All we're really focusing on in this one is just getting rid of these 36 grit grinding lines and thinning out that edge a little bit more. As we go up in grits, we want to make sure we keep it nice and cool, because the higher the grit, the more heat the belt retains, and we just want to make sure we don't burn our edge. Something to be mindful of whenever you are going through into the higher grit belts is you want to be really consistent with your hand movements. You want to keep a nice crisp bevel on there. You don't want to start getting relaxed and start getting waves and stuff like that because you accidentally went into the belt at the wrong angle or wrong, I guess you could say, degree this way or this way. You want to go in nice and even. Uniformity is key. That way you keep your bevels nice and crisp as you go up these grits. You don't end up putting a little dip in here that you've got to screw with later. You want all this stuff to stay nice and clean. So now it's time to go ahead and start hand sanding this. We need to go ahead and start with a 220 grit and get rid of any of the 120 grit grind lines that we have left. Plus we want to smooth and blend this plunge line. I mean, it's barely noticeable, but I just want it to blend up into the forge texture. I don't want there to be any type of hard line here. So I'm going to go through, we're going to sand and focus on that area, get it all blended together, and then we'll go at a different angle with the next grit and so on until we get to our last grit. Plus we're going to be making this edge even finer as we do this. That's why I'm using the softer backer on this sanding stick as opposed to the one that doesn't have it. We're just going to kind of start thinning out that edge to where it almost has a zero edge before we go to sharpen it. So that gives us a rough idea of where we need to be handle-wise. As you can see, that brings it up quite a bit on this top piece right here. Our top's not going to be that thick. You know, we're going to barely have a little bump up for our kind of our heirloom fit, where it kind of, the handle comes in and then it will actually round and step down to this right here. So the handle is going to be, of course, proud of this area, but because I left this super wide, whenever I bring the handle only about maybe between a 16th and an 8th, something like that, on the sides, it'll step down nice and have a good pinch grip, but it's going to taper pretty narrow up here and be a nice simple profiled handle, as you can see here. But this just gives us an idea how much material we need to cut off, and then we can profile the handle down to where it needs to be and fine tune it.
Alright, so we can go ahead and clean any lubricant or oil or anything off of here. Get any of that residue off that you can, because we're going to end up doing a vinegar soak on this, and that's going to patina it for us and put the finish that we want on it, and it's going to finish taking off the rest of this forge scale that we have up here in the ricasso area. We wanted to wait until we got to this point on the handle before we started doing this, because I gotta wait for that glue to dry. So while I'm waiting for that, I'm gonna let this soak. This is 30% vinegar, so it's pretty strong. This is cleaning vinegar. We're gonna go ahead, soak it in there for about 10 hours, and it's gonna go ahead and eat the rest of that forge scale off. It's gonna darken the blade a little bit, give us a nice satin finish. I think it's gonna look real good once we do the next step, which you're gonna see that, of course, in this next clip. So we're down to roughly where we want it to be. Now all I'm going to do is finish doing everything by hand. We got to massage a little bit more around where it's going to actually meet the ricasso area. But I wanted to do that part by hand instead of, getting it too close on the belt and not being able to sand the grit lines out before we actually get to our finished profile. I didn't want to make it too thin, so we're just going to do that by hand. Starting with 220 grit, we're going to go up to 320 grit, then we're going to just finish at 600 grit. But we're going to go ahead, start working on this shoe shine method across the spine, get it nice and round, come back in on the belly, then around the back side, and then clean up the sides. We got to leave these sides a little bit bare. We're not going all the way up on them because I still got to put a pin in here, then sand down the pin material, and then after we do that, we're going to clean it up. We want to do as much of the work as possible on all of the contouring and profiling before we actually do that pin. That way we're not trying to remove a bunch of material whenever we have this attached to the blade and then risk hurting the blade. I wasn't even in the camera whenever I wasn't in the camera whenever I did that. That's kind of ridiculous. I'd say that's sharp. Jeez, that is ridiculous. So, it's a sharp knife. I'm really happy with how this turned out, especially for being my build. That and I'm sorry if I sound like this. I'm just getting over a cold, so I sound like this. But for the video coming back from not doing Shop Talk Tuesdays for a little bit, because I've been so focused on getting knives ready for my website and for Blade Show that's going to be coming up. I know it kind of sounds crazy that I'm starting, you know, all that stuff now, but I wanted to make sure that I have enough stuff ready for it. But we're back. We were able to make this kitchen knife for one of my friends, and I think it turned out absolutely awesome. I like the profile on it. I like the finish that we got on it. The handle profile is nice and subtle. It tapers from the front to the center and then back down to the back. It's a nice clean profile with simple contouring. And I really like the color combination. He wanted a lime green black, so I did the lime green black and white. White pins, white center liner. Of course, it's a frame handle. And then 80 CRV2 for the blade. Nice thin geometry on that edge. Took it down to almost a zero edge. I think that turned out real cool. I like still having the forged texture from when we actually forged it. One of the things that's slightly different behind, or the way that I do my like frame handled or kitchen knives that are like this, is I tend to treat it like an integral bolster. I flare the ricasso up. So the blade has a taper to where the plunge line would come up to, so that this is the thinness, and then it tapers out to here. So it's got two tapers. It goes from wide to a certain thickness here, and then from there to a distal taper through the front. And what that does is leaves that a little bit thicker in that bolster area, so you get a nice pinch grip, and so that it runs into the face of the handle, and I can have a nice subtle transition from that handle down into the ricasso, so that it's just nice and comfortable. But I'm really happy with how that turned out. I really like the color combination on there. I think it was an absolute perfect choice for this build. But as always, I'm super interested to know what y'all think about this particular build. Do y'all like the color combinations? Do y'all like how the profile is and everything like that? Did y'all think it was sharp enough? Guys, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, the next video we do will be most likely a live stream, but hopefully I won't sound like this. I'm just now, like I said, getting over it, so everything's good. I don't feel sick or anything like that, but I have got to get this cleaned up the rest of the way, make sure we get some oil on it, and then get this over to him so he can give it to his lady for Christmas. So that was the build. Hopefully you like it. Guys, y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll catch y'all next time.